for the June polls in 2023. In recent decades, there has been a rapidly expanding reliance on electoral processes as the principal way to legitimize governance at national and local levels. When elections meet global standards of fairness, administrative professionalism, and respect for human rights, they provide popular support and legitimacy for both the sitting and elected governments. As such, appropriate electoral processes emphasize the peaceful management of social conflict through public dialogue, vigorous debate, and the authoritative selection of leaders through agreed rules. While elections in themselves are only the element of democracy, they create the basis for democratic governance by ensuring that leaders have credible and accepted mandates to govern. When people have the opportunity to participate freely in public life and to choose their leaders through a free and open process, they are less likely to feel a need to resort to violence to resolve their differences or to make their voices heard. At the same time, however, because electoral processes are fundamentally about the attainment of political power, often in high-stakes context, they can sometimes be a catalyst or accelerator of conflict. Experience shows that electoral contests can elevate social tensions and provoke violence, especially when the electoral process itself is not perceived to be free and fair, or where those seeking to retain or gain political power have few or no qualms about resorting to extraordinary measures, including the use of force to win. Violence is most likely to erupt in situations where there are also other underlying or root causes of conflict, such as exclusion, inequality, or a history of ethnic tensions. Sierra Leone is emerging from civil war and has an especially high potential for conflict during electoral processes. In recent years, from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, political violence has accompanied election processes before, during, and after the actual day or days of balloting. Elections do not cause violence, but the process of competing for political power often exacerbates existing tensions and stimulates the escalation of these tensions into violence. Elections pose distinct opportunities and challenges as a key element of governance design and programming to prevent violent conflict. Tonight, we are assessing the nation's readiness to keep the peace and national cohesion ahead of the polls in June. The Political Party Regulation Commission has fined. The Independent Commission for Peace and National Cohesion has warned. Experts have given warnings. All of this begs the question, is the quest for political power attainment bigger than the nation's peace? My name is Samuel Weisbangura, and this is AYVN Sunday. But following the violent protests on August 10th this year, President Julius Maada but the two giants APC and SLPP.
There are no protests.
Right, good evening and a very warm welcome to AYVN Sunday here on AYV Television on channel 33, on the STV channel 399, on radio FM 101.7, and on all our different social media platforms. Today we are assessing the nation's readiness to keep the peace and national cohesion ahead of the polls in June this year. As always, you can be part of our conversation. Share your thoughts with us to the AYV News Facebook page. But as always, we're begging, we're pleading, we're urging all of you to please tailor your comments to the issues being discussed here. As always, I have a star-studded panel of people who shape the conversations to help us put into context the discussion. I have Andrew Lavalier, Executive Director, Institute for Governance Reform. Andrew, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, viewers and listeners.
I have Abdul Fatoma, the Chief Executive Officer for Campaign for Human Rights and Development International. Chadi Abdul, good evening.
Good evening, Sameh, and good evening to the people of Australia.
I have the National Coordinator for WANEP, Aissata Mahoy. Doctor, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Samuel. Good evening, listeners and viewers.
All right, we're with the arrival of the Executive Secretary for the Independent Commission for Peace and National Cohesion, Awasali Samai to join the conversation. But gentlemen and lady, welcome again. Andrew, I'm going to start off with you.
Yep.
I mean, you have this initiative, the Unifiers movement, looking at how we can keep the peace and promote national cohesion, especially when the people themselves should take the lead.
Yes.
Now, with what is happening, we've seen where PPRC has come out with a statement warning, and at the end of the day, they fined the opposition, All People's Congress Party, because they feel that they created a platform for musicians to pass on provocative messages or lyrics in their songs when they have the platform. The Independent Commission for Peace and National Cohesion, again, has come out and warned. And there are red flags. We have the two political parties. When they meet, it's always a crisis. So, putting into context, where does the peace lie and our national cohesion, especially in the build-up to the June 24th polls? How would you paint that picture?
Thank you very much. Let me start with the positive, right? So we expect to see, after this election, we expect to see, there will be no more by-elections after this election. So in the past 16 by-elections, we noted that were Fatoma and others have been monitoring it. There have been very bloody contests. If you look at Bendugu, in the far north, in Kabbalah, even in western area, constituency 110. So I think what is good that is happening is that you can criticize the PR system for all you care, but because districts will be developing list and the country will be choosing from those lists, we will not be having by-elections anymore. And it will be useful to have this conversation within the context of the prevailing electoral law. We are not having first past the post anymore for this election. So we'll not be having what I call localized battles, where people want to win constituencies, at all cost. So what we'll be expecting is to see battles within districts. I think, to me, you mentioned red flags.
Does that rule the parties going down to the constituencies, going down to the communities?
Definitely, they will go down. They will go down. I think the biggest issue to worry about is between now and the polls. And what stands between now and the polls is the party primaries for the development of the party list. So the parties will be developing the list, and who gets on that list and who doesn't get on the list. So we'll be seeing, there will be, I think normally when we talk about conflict, we talk about conflict between parties.
Right.
We fail to realize the conflict within parties. So from now on to June 24, we'll definitely expect to see heightened conflict within the parties as to who gets on the list, who doesn't get on the list. So where we see political parties, few people within political parties, monopolizing who gets on the list without involving the grassroots, we'll definitely see tensions within the grassroots. For the two main political parties, the APC and SLPP, there's a difference between the two. We see within the SLPP, because it's a party in power, there's a sitting president, so you have someone with authority to say, you sit down. So you have a kind of commanding influence. For the APC, and that's always the case for when parties are in opposition. We saw this big time in the SLPP, up to the point Kande Yomkela and others had to quit. So if internal democracy is not handled properly in the period leading to the elections, we'll begin, let's forget about what happens between parties, even at the polls. We'll definitely see tensions, and there could be defections. There could be community-based violence, depending on how parties handle their internal democracy.
All right. Let me quickly welcome the Executive Secretary from the Independent Commission for Peace and National Cohesion, Hawa Samai. Good evening and welcome, Hawa.
Thank you.
All right. Abdul, let me hear your precursory remark. I mentioned the issue of red flags. And if we go back to, Andrew just mentioned intra-party tensions and dynamics, especially when there is some sense of perceived democracy. We've seen very recently when the APC was holding or conducting its lower level elections. There were tensions, there were incidents of violence reported, wounding, and every other thing there. Now, where is the peace and national cohesion ahead of the June polls?
Well, a lot of effort has been made by civil society organization and also government agencies. You know, Andrew earlier on made mention about our involvement in by-elections. We have been part of 22 by-elections since November 2020. And we work with the ECSL to ensure that we engage political party leadership and also candidates. Immediately when this candidate has been nominated, you know, by their political party, and the ECSL has certified them to run for those different by-elections, either council by-elections or parliamentary by-elections. And it's something Sierra Leone needs to celebrate because before November 2020, when we organize by-elections in this country, the likelihood for it to be cancelled is more bigger than the likelihood to sustain the result and move on. We had a lot of cancellation. The very constituency we started with, the 110 at Godrich, it was cancelled twice, and that was the third time when we get involved. And with our involvement to ensure that we create a plain level field for all candidates and also supporters in those constituencies and also wards, it helps a lot. Our intervention within the security sector and our intervention with the political party leadership actually to caution their members. We end up having by-elections in this country. Nobody knows about those by-elections. Some people get notice, you know, of those by-elections through the announcement of the result, but during the campaign time, the other process. Because even during campaign, we also engage the candidate. And some of the strange thing you get from those processes was when the opposition won those by-elections, and they also commend the Sierra Leone police for displaying the level of professionalism. And the ruling party will be crying foul that, you know, the police was not, you know, in their best hands. The two contested results during the tallying system, the Konadugu and the Kono one, we were able to resolve that amicably in front of those who Sierra Leoneans perceive as, you know, moral guarantors, the international community. And the interesting thing is that some of those political parties who end up being a winner never get back to the public to inform the public that there was an amicable resolvement of this issue. Civil society was at the center of it to ensure that, you know, transparency and accountability takes place. And for us actually to enjoy peace and cohesion in this country, rule of law and accountability has to be the way forward. There are several reasons why we are not happy with one another at community level, at regional level, at district level. I mean, this comes with a dissatisfaction with the national services, you know, within the citizens and the government.
Just before we get into the specifics and look at some of the institutional reforms that are needed for us to have a peaceful election come June, let me quickly bring in Dr. Mao. Yeah. You, the experts, have submitted that, in fact, our peace is deteriorating, owing to the fact that you look at the rankings. We are third in the region, now we're fourth, and Sierra Leone is said to be one of the most fragile states, and the indicators to provoke peace are present. So, and of course, the stakes are only getting higher with politics coming into play. What should we look at this point to have a peaceful society in the build-up to the June polls?
I think we should involve in engagement, dialogue, negotiations on how we'll be able to maintain the peace, prevent conflicts during the electioneering processes. The reason why I'm saying this is that because it's only when people are engaged, then you're able to understand what the problems are. You know, they'll come up with the problems, and then you together find solutions with the people themselves. So I think having community engagement, to start from the local level, I mean, the local level, go to the grassroots, like a bottom-top approach, wherein you continue to engage people so that the process itself will be void of violence. We will not say violence will not happen at some point, but we want to see the rate at which we'll be able to reduce violence compared to other elections that we have had. So what we're doing as the West African Network for Peace Building in this light is that we have been supported recently by the UNDP in terms of trying to ensure that first gather data on what is actually happening on the ground. So we have our monitors that are deployed, and then they gather data, I mean, on conflict and other issues that I imagine in the country at present. And then we have a response mechanism, which is the NAG, which is called the National Elections Response Group. In that National Elections Response Group, we have state and non-state actors alike. These are people that are people of trust at community level. And we have established these groups for them to be able to address issues that are coming up in the different districts that we are operating. So this is what we are doing presently, and we want to ensure that by the time we begin to have the primaries, you know, trying to get the list from the district level, people will begin to understand why it is good to be to hold peaceful elections, and also to ensure that as a nation we enjoy the peace and try to ensure we are back on track. Instead of dropping from the third position to fourth position, we maybe try to attain the second position or first, if possible. You know, so this is what we are looking at. But engagement is top-notch, and then this is what we should look to. Also, on the side of government and other political parties, I think we as civil society organizations, we need to do a lot more in terms of bringing these groups together. Because like my colleague was saying, there are tensions within political parties, which is the intra-party conflict, and also the inter-party conflict. And then when we begin to have the proper electioneering processes, then we begin to see, and this is what we are anticipating, and considering the data that we are receiving, there are issues, there are indicators.
How worrisome is the situation?
Oh, well, I will not put fear on the minds of Sierra Leoneans per se, but it's something that we can address as peaceful citizens. We should be mindful that politics should not divide us as a nation, and we should work as a country towards issue. We should be patriotic and push the peace agenda forward.
We've seen the Commission has cautioned the opposition political party, for example, the APC, after the PPRC fined the party for what it referred to as allowing the musicians to fan the flames using words that are not okay for the peace and national cohesion. But before then, we also saw allegations from the opposition that the elected National Secretary General was beaten by state guards and all of that. Now, with all of these staring us in our faces at this point, what is the Commission making of all of it?
Okay, first let me just correct our information in terms of the Global Peace Index.
Go ahead.
For the Global Peace Index, we're currently 5th in Africa. And we're 3rd in the sub-region. And for the Mano River Union, we're 1st.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're the most peaceful country in the Mano River Union. Do we want to give ourselves a tap in the back? No. And are we in the midst of a lot of tensions around at regional level? Yes, we notice that the region is very unstable, if I should put it that way. And Sierra Leone is one of the countries that are upholding that status that we're still peaceful in terms of the Global Peace Index in Africa. Our concern as the Commission is not only how do we maintain this, but how do we ensure that normally in all elections around the globe, there are always tensions, whether in Europe, America, Africa, it's almost the same everywhere. The issues might be different, but there are always tensions. So how do we work to ensure that we manage this tension and get a very peaceful election? That's our goal. And against that background, I will tell you that we have started, not now, we've been working, we also monitor some of the by-elections. We're even in Bendugo, as my brother put out some example on Bendugo, and we're able to manage situation there with all our partners on the ground, both local and international partners. And even the night before the elections, we know what we went through to ensure that the day of the election itself was peaceful. So for me, those were a test case. Were we able to manage them? Yes. Can these, what we did in terms of interventions, can we replicate them? Yes, I think we could. And as a commission, we cannot work in isolation. That's mission impossible. We'll always be working. Firstly, we do realize that we're new. We're barely a year, 6 months old. And there have been people on the ground that have been working on peace building issues. So we cannot work in isolation of them. And as I speak to you, we already have peace coalitions in every district around the country, which are civil society, women's group, and other groups, youth groups that have been working on peace building at district level. And even in Freetown, we had a proposal, a call for proposal with a team of other institutions. That's the Youth Commission, the Civic Education, and NACSA, because there would be some cash for peace as part of our project in that. It's for urban and peri-urban areas. We also have civil society that have applied for those grants. It was very open. It was on the newspaper for over weeks. And we now have about 18 civil society that will be working with in the urban and peri-urban area. And Freetown and Western Rural and Western Urban have been divided into 200 communities already. And this is because we do realize that the highest tension is always in the capital.
Are these hotspot areas?
Yes, we're prioritizing hotspot areas. Now, we do also realize that the intra-party and inter-party issues have been there even before now. If you look at our press release, it's always balanced, both the first one and the second one. We make sure that even though, for example, we were addressing SLPP convention in the first one, we make sure that we also speak to the other political parties. And with the second one as well, we were addressing the APC, but we also speak to the other political parties. Why did we do, for example, with the second one, we laid so much emphasis on the political leadership in the different political parties? Because we noticed that they're coming out already in almost all the political parties that they are for peace and social cohesion. So if the leaders are for peace and social cohesion, how are they translating this to their supporters? That was our main aim of those, for example, the second political, because you have now the two main political parties accusing themselves, not at the leadership, but with their supporters' issues. So how do we do them as political leaders translate this to themselves? How would they help in helping with the campaign? In terms of also the intra-party issues, for example, we sat at the IGC meetings to help them even get to the lower level election, even up to the convention. So we've been there for them. We'll continue to visit them if they need help. We'll continue to mediate because they need to say, we need help before we could step in. That's a political party issue all by itself. Or we could also advise them in some of our visits, how about them setting up peace structures within their system so that it will be able to mediate among themselves, so that we as a commission do not get involved in their integrities of what's going on in the political party themselves. So we will continue to push. I'm very happy with this discussion because prevention is better than cure, and the commission, one of our main goals is to work assiduously in terms of prevention. We're hitting the ground running. We've already been doing that. We have peace monitors around the country. Even for the registration, the peace monitor has started working. We have a minimum of 25 peace monitors in every district. All right. And these are mainly the bike riders and the youth because they're very mobile. And trainings, additional trainings are also will be conducted for these group of people.
We'll come to look at the readiness of the commission itself to protect Sierra Leone's peace and national cohesion. But as you mentioned earlier, that inter-party crisis has always been from the supporters and not from the party leadership. Let us predicate the conversation on this particular clip, where the National Publicity Secretary of the opposition, APC, CDI at Tunis, and that of the ruling SLPP, Lahai Lawrence Lima, had a conversation on one of our shows, our breakfast show precisely, with Amadou Lamanaba. And let's get to listen what they made out of that conversation, and we'll come back.
It seems we have a clear definition of how political parties and politicians or their members will want to provide security for themselves or defend themselves. But you want to react to some of the things he said?
Definitely. You see, APC is nothing but a political entity that is very opportunistic. They are demagogue. They do not believe in peace. All they believe in is to look for an opportunity to disrupt the peace. But I will say, I will not actually dabble into all the lies he has actually seated here to say and also try to provoke me into engaging into protracted argument. I will not go into that. I would say as much as this government is committed to conducting a free, fair, peaceful and transparent elections, but as a government also, we have the responsibility to ensure that the security of the state is guaranteed. We have taken due note of all the intelligence, of all activities, of movements of people, but I would say that nobody would disrupt the peace of these elections. Nobody would disrupt the peace of this country. We are capable of providing the necessary security for this nation. And that one I can assure anybody, if they do not believe in that, then let them just try whatever is boiling underneath in their sleeve. We would crush that without even going a step. So what we are saying,
Mr. Minister, you are the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs. Are you making a threatening statement?
This is not a threatening statement. Here we have had a situation from the start.
But you mentioned crush.
I'm coming. Yes, we will crush any attempt to disrupt the peace and security of this nation. Let me give you instances.
Will you also respect the rights and the human rights of citizens as well?
Of course, that is why when you are crushing, you do it professionally. And that is why, of course, there are state security personnel who are charged with the constitutional responsibility to ensure that the security of the state is guaranteed and is protected. What we are saying, we have them on record. Even from their own flag bearer, or even taking it from their previous leader, former President Nkrumah. He is on record to have promised to destabilize this nation. Their APC Samurai is on record to say that he will make this country ungovernable. CD is on record to have said that they will mobilize and disrupt the peace of this country to an extent that they will get military on the streets, you understand, to shoot people on sight. That is what he was saying, that they will ensure they activate level 3. They are on record. Even after their flag bearer raised when they were coming, every moment, every opportunity you give to the APC to speak, they have no message. They have nothing to put on the table for the people of this country to vote for them. What they rely on is to seek an opportunity to actually unleash mayhem on the people of this country.
I want to clarify quickly.
But as a nation and as a government, we have a responsibility to ensure that the security of this nation is guaranteed.
I want to clarify quickly the area where you mentioned that you'll crush anyone. I want to clarify. Are you making that statement as the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, or are you talking on behalf of the SLPP or the government itself?
As a key security stakeholder,
okay.
Anyone who attempts to disrupt the peace and security of this nation, he will be crushed professionally.
Okay, by the security forces.
Definitely.
Is that a directive?
It is a statement coming from a key security stakeholder that as much as we are charged with the responsibility to ensure that the peace and security of this nation is maintained.
But I would imagine the law enforcement agencies take directives from their police or the military hierarchy and not from the minister.
You should understand how governance works.
Okay.
You should really understand how governance works. That the policy directives come from the political players, and the strategic guidance is provided by the police themselves, and of course that is operationalized. So that's why when I talk, I talk as deputy. From that angle, I talk as deputy minister of internal affairs.
So the security agency should consider this as a directive or a statement, a policy statement from you as a deputy minister.
It's a policy statement. I have no regret saying that anybody attempts on the security of this nation, he will be professionally pursued, and if it is necessary to be crushed for the peace and security of this nation to prevail.
Quickly, you want to react? We'll take the statements, the reaction by the Minister of Information on the allegations of the beating of your Secretary General. You want to react to what you're saying?
Yes, but let me say this. First of all, I must say that the time that we have enjoyed peace most under this, in this country is under former President Ernest Bai Koroma. I am not surprised that the deputy minister here is making such flimsy statement about crushing people. Let me say this.
We have enjoyed peace.
Let me say this. Don't interrupt me.
We have enjoyed peace. We have enjoyed peace.
You made your point. I did not give you.
When people we are beating in SLP offices,
you made your point with your bogus threats. I did not interrupt you.
If you want
Well,
to
let me say this.
I'll give you the
people we are
opportunity
raped,
to react.
people we are beating. Is that a peaceful nature in which
Let me be very clear to Leeman here. This is a democratic
just allow him
country.
to make his point.
This is a democratic country.
And that's how you have to
we
behave
are
yourself.
a responsible political party. We don't need guns. We don't need bullets.
Just behave yourself.
We need our pens, our fingers, and our ballot boxes and ballot papers. And believe you me, we are going to use them to silence your guns. But let me say this. We are not afraid of your security forces. We are a democratic party. We will practice democracy. And if you stand in the way of trying to take away the rights of the people of this country, you will equally meet our forces as well. We are not afraid of your security forces, so go activate them. Recruit more police and army. You are not going to threaten anyone anymore.
Okay.
Oh, no. You are threatening with security. Bring them on. Fire your guns. Buy more RPGs. Shoot people. We are not surprised. You have been able to massacre people at Pademba Road, massacre people, and you think you're going to go away with it. You will not get away with it.
But I'm very certain you behave yourself in this election.
Gentlemen.
You also should behave yourself. Because the only people that is destabilizing this nation is you. Using your forces to massacre innocent citizens, and you think you get away with it just like that? Come on.
I don't talk too much on that. Let's take a break quickly. You just don't behave yourself.
Let's take a break. We'll come back.
All right. Lahai Lawrence Lima, National Publicity Secretary of the ruling Sierra Leone People's Party, CDI at Tunis, National Publicity Secretary of the opposition All People's Congress Party, there with Amadou Lamaraba talking about security and how the elections would pan out should anything stop one of the two political parties. So let me start off with you, Andrew. What do you make of those comments? First off, as we talk about keeping the peace and ensuring that the elections are held in a very serene atmosphere.
I think it's unfortunate. I think it's very unfortunate because 4 months to election, what I expect to hear now is what are the conversations among political parties for water, for electricity, for jobs. I mean, since 2002, the war ended. Not up to 30% of young people still have jobs. I think I've said this many times, that it is time we start to pin political parties down. How can they move beyond rhetoric to making elections meaningful? I think what we've been doing over time is our democracy is really more about changing government, not changing outcomes. And for us, I mean, for those supporting SLPP, APC, I think it behoves all of us to make sure that elections are meaningful. So for the conversation that I just had, there are responsibilities on the side of both government and opposition parties. For the threat assessment we did together with ONS, they mapped out clearly what are the issues of threats. I mean, from the chief, for example, because we have what we call incumbency abuse, and what we call, you know, in the case of the political parties that are not incumbent, there is normally, you know, mobilization of extremism, which will play out in violence. So there are many forms of incumbency abuses. And ONS actually laid out things like the chief, right from the community level. How is the chief going to play out, the chief going to ensure that every political party has the liberty to campaign peacefully? And the election management bodies, the PPRC, you mentioned the PPRC levying a fine on the APC. And I only hope the PPRC will have the courage again, if SLPP, there's a misdemeanor on the part of SLPP, they levy that fines. You know, something significant happened in 2007.
Yes.
So you may disagree with Christiana Top for all you care, but when she said 477 polling stations have been cancelled for overvoting, and at that time, the party that felt the brunt was SLPP, because they were the receiving end of that judgment. Do you know what has happened after that? No party overvotes anymore. So the more institutions act, the more they put all of this nonsense under control. So institutions, the EMB, the PPRC, I'm happy my sister is here from the Peace Commission. So the more they act, and you know, normally the area that is difficult for them to act is on the ruling party because they appointed them. So PPRC should have the courage. So if SLPP does something untoward, to act. Even under Infali, we saw a progress in electoral management. And I could say emphatically, when you compare election, we just saw what happened in Nigeria. When you compare what happened in Sierra Leone, I think we are way above many other countries in Africa. So we have to be strong as institutions to put some of these things, these statements that we're hearing under control. And of course, the media as well. So I don't know what was the conversation that morning, but we have to pin political parties to discuss what is good for us. For Freetown, a number of people in Freetown, they queue for water 5 a.m.
Just before we get to some of these fundamentals that should shape the conversation, Andrew, I want to go back to the utterances of Lima and Sidi Yaya Tunis. You know, you mentioned you worked with the Office of National Security, and the office has its National Election Security Steering Committee and all of that. But what can they do at this point to ensuring that political parties play by the rule, comply by the dictates of what, transparent and credible elections call for? Because if ONS, for example, has banned the use of martialism, no political party should go on with marshals, the state should be able to provide security. You have opposition parties who are saying, no, we do not trust state apparatus, so we can provide security on our own. And if you go by what Sidi is saying now, well, if you come with your forces, you will also meet our own forces. And you go by what Lima is saying, we would use the security forces if you tend to disrupt the peace. So imagine you have these two forces. You have the state actors and those that have been recruited to protect the opposition on their side. What does that bring to the mix?
You know, since 2012, since we started tracking police accountability, Afrobarometer, 2012, I think this year, 2022 rather, we are now having the lowest approval rating of the Sierra Leone police. Don't get me wrong, there are areas where Sierra Leone police is doing very well.
Right.
When we ask them about, response to gender abuses, their ranking is very high. But in terms of traffic and issues like this, so their ranking is very low. So I think the ONS has a mandate as an institution responsible for
coordination of security.
For coordination of security. They have a mandate to ensure that, you know, the police, and that came out clearly in the threat assessment, police professionalism. And if we're talking about incumbency abuses, those are the areas we need to look at. And how do you ensure that our security forces are professional? Because there is a clear meaning of power. What do people mean by power in Sierra Leone? The meaning of power is I will lock you up, right? I will lock you up. That's the meaning of power. So we have to ensure that the meaning of power is not just my ability to restrict your movement, but my ability to deliver services. And I know because where the domain where I come from is about converting power to service delivery. So to me, I was just going through some of the issues, the alarm signals, areas of incumbency abuses that we need to pay attention to. We spoke about the police. My friend Carl, Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, they are really monitoring the courts, because if the court is not seen to be even, we will have situations like this where people say, I don't trust the legal recourse process. So we have to ensure that the state provides proper justice. And then we've mentioned the chiefs. But the issue of resource, how are we using even financial resources of the state in moments like this? I only hope institutions like you are actually monitoring expenses, state expenses, in moments like this. But there is also, we can talk about incumbency abuses for all we care. Limba, what they were grilling Limba on was on incumbency abuse. How do you ensure that you do not use security forces? You know, you have to use them democratically. But there's also the issue with the opposition. And it has been largely about ethnic mobilization of voters. We'll be publishing the Afrobarometer on national cohesion. Ethnic mobilization of voters has been, I know it's done by both sides of the political divide, but we expect at this moment for, especially the main opposition party, to be floating, to be having a policy position on many other issues. And forget about, providing, mobilizing people on the basis of ethnicity. We're just collecting data now where we ask the question, will you vote for a party? Will you vote for, so imagine majority of people in your ethnic group decide to vote against your party, against a particular party. Will you vote for that party? We have 40% of people saying they will not vote against the interests of their ethnic identity. So ethnicity is making it difficult for even political parties to be accountable. And I know it was not mentioned in that conversation, but I think we need to bring it to the conversation when we're talking about simmering down the tension in a moment like this.
Abdullah, let's get to what Andrew was talking about, the power of incumbency. We go back to the Sierra Leone police. So somebody was telling me the other day that by default, the police force itself is politicized. You have the police council, headed by politicians, the vice president, the minister of internal affairs, as chair and secretary general to that very council that looks at policies and all of that and sent to the police for operationalization. So if that is anything to go by, then how do we trust state institutions in the sense? The other day I had Karamokaba, one of my shows, and he was talking about how they do not trust the Sierra Leone police because they've witnessed over time how the police has been, how the force have been influenced. And I asked if whether or not that was out of experience, since he also held a position like Lima, if that was out of experience. And it was very clear it was out of experience. So how do we then handle situations like that when the state institution that should ensure internal security is being politicized?
Yeah, thank you. Before I go to your question, may I just
yes,
comment
you can go back
on,
to that. Yes.
the Lima and City issue.
Definitely.
And the statement there from the Deputy Internal Affairs Minister, it appears to be a very serious concern to the people.
Actually, to make things clear, he was invited as the national publicity secretary of the party, but it was very difficult to distinguish between his ministerial office and
never,
yes.
during the seconds of those conversations, he never associated himself as a publicity secretary. He associated himself as a security stakeholder and as a policy holder persons. And getting paid from taxpayer of this country and telling them that you're going to crush them. You know, there are more other lighter way, polite way to send a message to caution people to respect law and order in this country. But if you are the minister who supervises the law enforcement, one of the law enforcement agencies, that is the Sierra Leone police, you know, you should behave responsibly. That statement was irresponsible, was reckless, and it is against the will of this, the will of these people, I mean the people of this country. If it has been more progressive democracy, he would have not been holding his position by now. You cannot say to the people that you govern, you're going to crush them in whatever way or means. There are more polite ways to send a message, to send a signal that this country is a constitutional republic, it's a law and order country, we will not tolerate any lawlessness. But then if we have government officials who are lawless, who can make lawless, you know, utterances, it worries, you know, our security status in this country. And that doesn't, you know, the ONS and the other security sectors that we are working with during this electioneering process, that very message never represents their views or their opinions, because we have engaged them extensively. We even brought them to Brufis Hotel where they shared their vision, how they want to prevent conflict during elections. And such a reckless word was never associated with their presentation. So I think he needs to apologize to the people of this country. And if the government really cares about the welfare and the protection of this country, he needs to go off.
It takes two to tangle.
Yeah, he needs
So
to
Lima mentioned that, but also CD said that if those forces are out, they would also meet their own forces. And where would those forces
he
come from?
more responsibility than CD. I mean, he is a sitting, you know, minister, and CD. He's just a citizen and also executive member of an opposition political party.
That forms an integral component within the governance structure.
Within the governance structure, but he is a sitting, you know, minister. He owns more responsibility than that of city. So let me come to the issue
of the police.
Yeah, the police. There's one bigger issue, like you said in your intro. The police, the composition of the police, you can see a lot of politics at play. You know, the office of the vice president, the minister of internal affairs, and then you still have the Police Act, the 1964 Police Act. And in that act, there is a provision for the internal affairs minister. If he gives okay to anybody in the police, that individual, he or she can go publicly and declare themselves as a political party activist or a political party supporter. The fact that the minister given that individual okay, it's clear in the law. It is a law. So if we actually want to have a police to police us, we should, you know, work around with the police. If the Law Reform Commission is working, we work with the Law Reform Commission, you know, to ensure that we reform the laws, because that law is not democracy friendly. It is against the very people that the police are policing. So in other democratic nations, we have seen huge progress. 2 years ago, we approached the police, and a very senior police officer at the management meeting that election is coming. There's no way they can tamper with that law. So we have to forgive them and wait after elections. And so, but we see ECSL, PPRC, and others reform their law. You know, 1 year, 6 months towards election, even, you know, 7 months towards election. So we were wondering, why such a blatant, excuse, in terms of reforming the police. But then the earlier composition of the police before we demolish the local government and reintroduce it. Previously, the police board comprises of the mayor, paramount chief, tribal heads persons, and others. But now that is not the case, because we introduced the 1991 Constitution from the 1975 or 78, something like that. And then with the 1991 Constitution, there was no local council. So it was more narrow. When you actually take a look at the 1991 Constitution, it's more about one-party design. The only areas that actually give window to democracy is the Part 3, talking about the multi-party democracy, and other governance institutions. But you look at the power confines in the presidency, you actually see that this is clearly, one-man show, something. So in our effort to do the reform, engaging on the white paper after election, I think we need as a country to rally around the political powers for us actually to have constitutions that speaks for us.
At this crucial time, without the reforms in the salient police, what would it mean for a peaceful conduct of the elections? Because evidently the opposition, the opposition parties do not trust the police. And the police is seen as being weaponized against the opposition by the ruling party. So how would that come out?
That comes, sometimes people can say politicians are hypocritical. Very recently, the All People's Congress praised the SLP for professionally manning their convention. Several by-elections won by the All People's Congress at Wellington and other communities across the country. To us, they praise the Sierra Leone police, behaving professionally. But when once things never goes, their way, definitely the police is unprofessional. We definitely know, we are on record in this country condemning the Sierra Leone police, both in Kaba government, in Kroma government, and beyond government. So when politicians come out, when things are good, praise the Sierra Leone police, but when they see, tensions high, they start casting doubt on the Sierra Leone police. That creates a hypocritical position. We all know how divided we are. We are not only sharply divided, we are deeply divided. And state institutions have been used, has been weaponized, for our political interests. Certain institutions, they will withdraw some, security forces and say, XYZ security people, they are not for us. They will not be with us. So definitely we cannot deploy them on operations. And the other people say, no, we don't want this type of people, to provide security for us. We have our own men. So we even having political party dictating to state institution, as to how they should carry out state functioning. So that is a worry sign for us. But with our engagement with the security sector, I think, there is a strong possibility that we can have a peaceful election.
All right. Isata, let's talk about democratic institutions. So we've talked about the police. The PPIC is also being accused as another tool being used by the government to silence opposition political parties. Femi Claudio's school is there complaining how PPIC is being used as a weapon to kill her party, and the ADP is another party complaining. We also have the courts. We've seen how the justice system is being administered. So people, to a point now, people are saying what we're getting is worrisome. If the court cannot be seen as a sucker of hope, or as where political parties go to seek redress, if they do not trust that particular system, then it's becoming unbecoming for the peace of the state. The ECSL is also being accused by, which is almost a monumental problem. So how do we address, or how do these institutions position themselves to be trusted, to regain confidence, by those they deal with, especially the political players?
Okay, first and foremost, just to bring out my own opinion.
On the clip,
this,
go ahead.
yes, on the clip, yeah. It's an unfortunate incident, and the utterances are also condemned, because for those two major political parties in this country, which people know, they are the traditional political parties, we expect a lot from them. Whatever utterances you're going to give to people, don't try to divide them, and don't try to hypnotize their minds, per se, to do things that will go out of the way. And you know, this is the age of social media. And even when we did the threat assessment with ONS, hate speech, which I consider that particular speech as hate speeches, is one of the most prevalent indicators to violence in this country. And now what we even see on social media is that people implicating people, using bad words, using utterances that, you know, we disrupt an entire society. So these are things that we should work towards in terms of trying to eradicate them. Now trying to, then on the other part of how to make institutions more professional and work. First, I just want to reiterate here that the Office of National Security, which is which the ISPC, Integrated Election Steering Planning Committee, is operating under, is presently undergoing or conducting trainings for security personnel in this country on different models, so that it helps them to be more professional in terms of handling or when they work with communities or citizens of this country, or when they execute their duties. So those trainings are presently on the go, and OneUp and others, civil society seated here, are also part of that particular institution. So these are part of the things that we do as institutions to ensure that we help build capacity and power so that people can be professional. On the side of people not having justice or do not trust the system, I think this is something we've been talking about here for a long time. Me, I'm one person who has always been saying it, that people do not trust the system because there are certain things they feel that are not right. First, unequal distribution of wealth, also how people access justice. Now, that sabi you, they're able for help you. Also, having orders from above, it has been governments in, governments out. We have been having these issues, just like my colleague was saying, that when it suits them, it's okay. But when the table turns and it happens to be the other way, then they start to politicize or talk about things. I think it is high time political parties, because they are the ones that are dividing citizens in this country, try to begin to think, to re-strategize. So I was looking at trying to look at new global solutions to peace and sustainability that we must follow in this particular country. First, you ensure that equal distribution of wealth is there. Because now people are saying that, oh, it's because this government is in power, so they cater for their cronies, their tribesmen and everything. So the other political parties or opposition do not benefit or do not get the merit from the coffers, you know. So these are issues that we should try first and foremost to ensure that we try to wipe them out. So as a step, stamp out exclusion. That's the catchword. You stamp out exclusion, meaning everybody should be on board. Who is capable to handle certain areas? You know, whatever issues of national development, people should not be excluded from it. If I am a Sierra Leonean and I see that in this particular work that is going on there, I have rights, I have the responsibility to ensure this goes on well. Elect them or call me. I they put more today. You know, just to make sure that you know where your heart is and ensure that you participate there fully. And then the other thing is...
how well do you think we should sound that particular trumpet for inclusion? Because it's been the same concern over time, over decades.
Think, yes.
So is there a new strategy now to get that done? Because there was a report done by IGR where the common perception that if I come from AYV, I'm appointed, AYV should be developed. But that has not been the case. So he also talked about ethnic mobilization.
Yes,
but at the end of the day, there are no benefits to the people.
Exactly.
So how do we handle that?
And also, I think we should have a database for professionals. You have a database for professionals in this country. You say, okay, I look this particular person, devoid the party where it belongs, as long as you're able to handle this. This is the kind of person we want. How do we get this person into our camp so that we are involved, we work on behalf of national development? These are the kind of things that I want to see.
Political pundits have advanced over time that the politics we practice is based on complementarity, based on rewards. I mean, if you've invested in me securing or winning power, I do not care whether Dr. Mao you are competent or not. You've invested. So this is the politics we've been practicing over time. So how do we change that? I mean, in terms of getting people to the realization that it's bad and it has kept us, it has stagnated development forever. But how do we change that?
But what I also think is that we have to re-strategize as civil society organizations, trying to look at trying to look at how, as a group or a platform, we ensure that we hold these people accountable. In as much as we are going there all the time to look at the Constitution, trying to make amendments in the Constitution, we should also look at ways we have referendums where we insert certain clauses that says devoid of political party. If people, we have this database of people where we think that these people are very good engineers, or these people are very good designers, something. We need people. We cannot go out to get them, or we do not only rely in our camp to get this. So there are policies that says you look on the other side and get somebody to come and work. And then the reward, and make sure that people are also politically responsible in terms of taking decisions, actions. Because we now see what happens in some of these offices when we have, especially those that call themselves the technocrats in those offices, in the ministries or MDs, the infights are too much. So building the minds of Sierra Leoneans,
where do we start? I asked that question because you go back. When former President Ernest Bai Koroma appointed Victor Bokarifo as vice president, in his statement when ascribing to the oath, said the APC is a party that rewards for hard work. President Julius Maada Bio at the town hall, he go only work with Uda Isabi, boss we believe in. And so what it's telling us is SLPP cannot work with APC. APC cannot work with SLPP. So irrespective of competence. So the question is, it's the best way forward for development, but how do we achieve that?
That's what I'm saying. We as civil society that are not with them try to re-strategize and refocus our energy in terms of how to build, because these are some of the steps to building peace and sustainability. I was trying to bring out some of the issues like trying to ensure that there is equality among men and women. There is equality in the law. When you look at how people access justice, how people access services. Also, we should try also how we strategize ourselves, position ourselves as civil society, come up with our demands, or come up with our strategy and say, Parliament, this is what we need and this is what we want to be included in some of these policies. I think we should be very serious about it. Until we are serious about it and serious about the work of civil society that we do, then they will begin to take us seriously. Because these are the things that I think will strengthen the sustainability of peace in a particular country. And then this is what we'll begin to look at. And then also fixing the intergenerational problems. Looking at the young and the old.
Are these realistic, or are they not just basically? Because looking at the culture of Sierra Leone. Okay.
Yes, we just
let me quickly bring in our looking at the personality cult. Within the Sierra Leone, political context, where you have this powerful political figure who would come out, tell you that, we will not want violence. Leone, keep the peace. Let's become. No, the other day, Umar Fofana and I we were having a conversation in Liberia when he mentioned that covering the elections, the war, Fode Sanko would come in the open, that, oh, ceasefire, lay your guns. But he would go back in the bush and tell his guys to take up the guns. Fire. I mean, we have to keep our territory. So the genuine nature of our political leaders to keep and protect the peace, when for them their interest is just how do they get the next political power. How positioned is the commission for this? Because it's really tough. And looking at how the incumbent would want to, like Andrew put it, the abusive nature of that power of incumbency. When the SLPP that, would come, and how positioned is the commission to actually withstand those pressures to ensure that the peace and national cohesion is sustained?
Okay. First, because everybody touched on the video,
right?
I cannot be seen not touching on that as well. Let me say that this is the first time I'm listening to it because I was not in town. Coming back, it has been a lot of things going through with back-to-back meetings on elections preparedness. But I want to say that from the commission perspective, these kind of conversation, I think they are unacceptable in this day and age. And one of the things that I could see from both parties is communication issues, the way they communicate. And I think people need to learn how to communicate with each other, especially in public space. We need to know that people are listening, and also people could interpret and misinterpret what is being heard. Because I'm sure this would have been a big debate now on social media.
Right.
And everybody could have their own interpretation of what it means. For me, just looking at this is already a counter against counter, like I'm ready for war from both sides, which we do not want. We should realize that peace is cheap. And you not realize how cheap peace is until we get to that war phase. And I'm sure nobody was happy. We were never happy the last 21 years, what we went through as Sierra Leoneans. And definitely we will not want to go back to that space. Now, coming back to your question now, of course, it's, we, as I mentioned earlier, that noticing what's been going on in this space for election, it's not strange. We've been in this space for a very long time. And there's nothing new happening now that have never happened in Sierra Leone. It's like repetition of itself over and over. But do we want that repetition to continue? Although we've never had war out of all of this during our elections process, at the end of the day, we always have a peaceful kind of election. And we always have a leader. But how do we ensure, with what we saw August 10, and knowing that flares could easily be breached and people could easily jump the fence without even thinking, with all this push that is going on all over this place? Firstly, yes, leaders can say something in public and say something in secret, but we hope, that's why we're saying we hope that they will replicate their words to their supporters this time around. That was part of our commission's press release.
Right.
And we would not stop there as a commission. Firstly, we would be engaging different forums. We will be engaging Parliament. Parliament will soon be closing, but before they close down, we'll be engaging them as parliamentarians. And because we know once they get out there, it's a different ballgame. They're in their election jackets and they all want their political party, even if they do not have a seat, they want their political party to win. How should they engage? And how should they engage peacefully? And we will encourage dialogue among themselves. We'll also go down to district level. We would engage political parties at all district levels. Because most of the time, when you get to the district and when you get to national level, it's completely different thing, because we monitor all these lower level elections as well. And you find out that it's not replica of what's happening at the national level that's happening at those district levels. So we want to engage them. And engaging them is bringing them all as executive, all political executives together. We've had deliberation with PPRC on this. And PPRC and ourselves will be sharing with them and have dialogue with them, which we hope will transcend down to the chiefdom level in terms of working with them for conflict prevention. We'll also be working, because most of the time, whether you like it or not, they'll be using all spheres of life, the ghetto boys and all the rest of it. So we'll have civil society as well go down there, because at that level is their level, civil society level. As I mentioned earlier, we're working with civil society, and we will get them to do a lot of engagement on ground level, because we don't want one district to be on fire and the other district to be peaceful. So we will spread thin with civil society, because that's our strength, around the country to ensure that they engage the relevant stakeholders. They would identify the troublemakers at district level and the people that could easily ignite trouble at district level.
How do you even deal with the tagging that even that comes along with even the CSOs, for example? When some CSOs, I mean, you see that people say, oh, it's APC. Some say, oh, it's SLPP. So how do you even first off deal with that and restore trust and confidence? Well, the people themselves are able to trust, I mean, the messengers you're sending out there.
That's why we're dealing with all civil societies that have worked on peace building before. We're not handpicking. We went to the council and we asked for a list of all those that have registered that they're working on peace building. So we did not handpick. And we have those that also have evidence of working on peace building. And when they met, they did not deny that they do not know themselves. So it's not, we didn't choose one institution or two institutions or just 5 at the district. We say everyone that is working on peace building should be part of the coalition. So with that, we believe that there's a balance. Even if they have, there is one on one side of a party and there's another one, I'm sure everybody will not be on the same side. So we've created the atmosphere of balancing without handpicking institution, because that's what we want. With that, we sure will have the balance that we desire at that district level. And if all of them were to go to them and have a dialogue with them at the same time, simultaneously, then they know that this is a joint force. This is not about just the Peace Commission itself, but this is about the Peace Commission and the voices on the ground. We worked similarly on that last year, and we had a very productive response to that. And we noticed that they were working hand in glove with the systems that we put in place. And what we also want to say that these systems that we're putting in place as a commission, they're not just there. They will not just be there for elections. They will become permanent structure of the commission itself. So even after elections, they will be in existence. To mediate, we have mediators on the ground. We have 2 different mediators. We have women that will take the lead because of Resolution 1325. But if they are back on the wall, for example, for societal issues that women cannot cross the line, we have men that will also work with them simultaneously. So we have structures that we put in, and we want to ensure that, that this will suffice for peace progress. Let me also add on, Isata mentioned about inclusiveness in terms of the process. To be inclusive in whatever we do is a process. And it could take a long haul in getting that process through. Rwanda did not do it in one day. We should realize that. And this is also part of the mandate of the Commission. And these are all part of our strategic plan, our 3-year strategic plan. Yes, we're working on putting so many structures in place for the elections, and even after the elections, we putting on system with the AU in place for early warning and early response that will span. It's not just for elections, but even span after. It's a permanent. I did mention that's a permanent structure. But in terms of inclusiveness, these are dialogue that will continue.
Let's talk about that. I'm going to predicate this question on a conversation I have with Francis Ben Kaifala from VACC the other day. And what he told me, sometimes corruption, the president does not necessarily need to even pick a phone up and call Awa. By obligation, having appointed Awa Samai as the head for this particular institution, Awa feels obligated, wanting to protect the interest of the president. So the president does not necessarily need to call you. So sometimes people say, oh, the president is influencing, but actually the president is not calling. Just feeling like, oh, well, this is another man and give me a job. I need to look after an interest. With that in mind, and you also mentioned how you've handled by-elections and how peaceful they've turned out. The stakes are even getting higher now. It is, I mean, we're talking about national elections, the presidency, chair, and all of that. How the independence and trust of the commission is key. How would the APC, how would the NGC, the C4C, the PDP, the Unity Party trust the commission when issues arise that the commission is not looking after the interests of the SLPP at the end of the day? How do you build that?
Okay, again, let me say that for the 1 year, 6 months that we've been in existence, my brother is smiling with my emphasis on our space. We've been able to mingle and mix with all political parties. And one way or the other, all political parties have had some issues with the government or among themselves, and so on and so forth. And no political party would testify that the commission has not been there for them. We've been very apolitical. We've been working with all political parties. We've been mingling and mixing. We've been at their back when, for example, they fall into issues. We've been very supportive in dialoguing between governments or state institutions for them. And we've also been very, very supportive to all political parties. Even me sitting at the IGTC, nobody would ever say that what they've ever discussed at those meetings are being aired out because I'm under oath of confidentiality. So there are things that you would do that would ensure that this institution is on the line in terms of repetition. Let me also go to our chairperson. Our chairperson is Reverend Johnson. He's just been through Parliament, and he's been a mixer. He lived in the North, right? And he's been a friend of the former president, and he now lives in the South, and he's been also the friend of the current president, and he speaks with all of these people. So these are some of the foundation that we have, and he's a very trustworthy personality. And people, even in Parliament, when he went to Parliament for the first time, he has the highest applause because people know him everywhere. And people believe in integrity when he's dealing with issues. They believe that he's very a fair person and a very unbiased person. So with this kind of chair heading the institution, so I'm sure people would be happy to know that they have this kind of person working with them. Nevertheless, in terms of elections preparedness, we also have people from other countries that will be at our situation room so that people will know that we have a very plain field where people could walk in and know that you're not only dealing with reputable Sierra Leoneans, but also you're also dealing with people that do not even know you and do not know any political party. So they're there for either mediation or advice that you could bank on throughout the elections process.
Let me run through a few messages. We have many of them on Facebook, and I'm also just going to ensure that I take the ones that speak to the issues. Matthew Smart is saying, peace starts with yourself. From both conversations, some amount of tension started, and it ended up in the studio of AYV, where the two PROs from the two main parties in Sierra Leone were creating more tension for public consumption. The way forward is there should be a peaceful dialogue with experts involved. Abdul Hadi Sanko is saying the issue of imposing fines on actions done by individuals is a welcoming idea, only advised to be imposed across board. Without good, okay, I'm skipping that. Okay, no personality attack. Some man, including me, they eat, okay. Most peaceful country in the sub-region, how? A country where citizens are massacred for protests. Sierra Leone is very good in winning international awards that are not reflective of the way we live. President Bill winning the best president in the world for 2022. A year that's the highest number of Okay, I'm skipping that. For me, civil society in this country, they're not working in the interest of our people because of all the government issues that are coming up. They're not taking any action. Ali Bangura is saying all of those on the panel did not, okay. They said all of you have not condemned Lima's action. Yes, so well, no, I'm not sure. He gets what he wanted to. Bashiru Loxi Mustafa Fala is saying the vote is the most powerful instrument ever devised by man for breaking down injustice and destroying the table walls which imprison men because they are different from other men. Every citizen of this country should be guaranteed that their vote matters, that their vote is counted. IGR, civil society groups should know this, and that in the voting booth, their vote has much weight as that of any CEO, any member of Congress or any president. Voting is a right best exercised by people who have taken time to learn about the issues. The election is not about violence. Samuel, trust me. Lucky Bash, from Tunisia is saying that. Okay. Sierra Leone is the only country where some citizens celebrate when the country go down. Peace and love is the way for the country to thrive from the two PROs. It seems like the tension has reached the state of ripeness. Okay. Molai Wabai Kumari Samuel, why are we not hearing much from New? Is it that they are refusing to come? Okay. New is a consortium of over 300 organizations. Some of these organizations are part of New. All right. IGR, okay. Democracy is not something that happens, just at election time, and it's not something that happens just with one event. It's an ongoing building process, but it is also ought to be part of our culture, a part of our lives. No one is born a good citizen. No nation is born a democratic one. Rather, both are processes that continue to evolve over a lifetime. Young people must be included from birth. A society that cuts off from its youth severs its lifeline. So long as we have enough people in this country willing to fight for their rights, we would be called a democratic state. Anti-democracy is a virus that exists, and pro-democracy is the antibody to that virus. And I think we have to become vigilant, and we have to stay on top of the issues of democracy and freedom. This is not about APC and SLPP, Samuel. It's too sorry. I'm going to take at most 5 more messages. We have many messages here. I don't see anything wrong with Lima's statement. The message is clear. Anyone who tries to disrupt the peace of the country will be, okay, I'll leave it at that. Alfios is saying, even among the CSOs, they have opposing views. But when you gather the same CSOs with the same views to talk on a very sensitive issues like this, begs the question if you guys are really serious in the right sense of the word. God save our democracy. 2 more messages to go. We'll be announcing a vacancy, for you guys to be producing our shows. It's always a good thing. When President Buhari told Nigerians that anyone who attempts to disrupt or attempts to grab ballot boxes in their electioneering process, it will be okay. So we're avoiding, even messaging now, we're avoiding the words. Okay, 2 more messages. Abdul Fatoma, you might be saying the truth, but be mindful of what's coming out. Like, okay. Coca J saying, a woman celebrated when people were killed in Freetown to me on the phone. Okay. Final message I'll take. We want lawlessness to stop. We cry about lawlessness. However, when our security forces go after lawless individuals, we cry baby. We are very hypocritical in Sierra Leone. Stephen Yale is saying that. I would have to hold the messages there. Andrew, let's get back to really. You were talking about some of the issues that we should focus on when our politicians come out to talk. What they should really, the issues they should articulate on. You talk about the socio-economic needs. There's water. There is health, the economic situation. How do we get our politicians to understand that when they come out, instead of fanning the flames, these are the issues they should be addressing, providing alternative approaches to when the APC says they're going to do this way, the SLPP say we're going to do this, but this different way. How do we encourage them to know that at the end of the day, it's about the policy, it's about what you sell out, that Sierra Leoneans will be judged in making that decision or passing the verdict June 24th?
So I think it goes to the media. It goes to the media. So I don't know what
we're also being tagged red and blue, depending on what's
definitely. I don't know what was the topic that day or that morning, but had the topic been about we have water crisis, how do we solve it? How do we get solutions? They won't abuse one another. In fact, what we will be doing, you'll be pushing political parties to do research before coming on air. But I think what the media, and Samuel, I really admire.
Defense, by the way, for the media.
I admire your kind of style of journalism.
With no defense for the media, we've seen in situations where the media would, invite politicians to talk on issues. Then it goes back to trading accusations. Oh, no,
I know. But as an anchor, it's always good to rein them in. So we're talking about this. So you won't go on CNN and say that. You won't go on an irresponsible media. You can't say that. So I know, politicians are emotive, and for the period now going into elections, this is a moment where politicians are really emotive.
Right.
So some of the messages you've been hearing, some really direct personal attacks at some of us, it's because people want to hear a certain, they just want you to legitimize their own biases. If you don't do that, they go after you. So we know that. So this is the process that we have midwifed, and I think moving towards election, we actually need to simmer down the rhetoric, and it starts with the media rooms. So that's my first point. My colleague from ONEP, Aisata, she laid a very interesting basis on how do we move on, together with Hawa as well. But I think it will be useful for us to discuss the next 4 months. That's the most crucial.
Right.
It's useful for us to say that in the next 4 months, I know we are going into an electoral process where most of those people sending those messages, they have never even taken their time to know what type of election are we going into. How are their votes going to translate into seats? It's not understood. The last time we checked, there are still a good number of Sierra Leoneans who have not even heard that we are going to run a proportional representation elections. So what is going to come out of that? We're talking about trust of systems, and I'm happy what Fatoma said. When the systems favors you today, it's good. When it's against you, it's bad. But if people do not understand the system, they distrust it more. And in this context of distrust, where, to be honest, when you look at the Electoral Commission, they're facing limited resources. They have competing expectations of the public. The other day when we did an assessment of the by-election areas, we asked, do you trust the results from these by-election areas? Over 70% of people said the results we trust. And then we asked, do you trust the Electoral Commission? The trust went up. But when we stepped out, say, do you trust the by-election results in those areas? When we aggregated trust of the Electoral Commission, it went down. So it's always good for us to decipher between what is the political rhetoric coming from politicians who sometimes, even by distrusting the institution, is a political point scoring. We have to decipher that from the election machinery. If you go and ask in a polling booth or in the registration booth, SLPP, APC officials, party agents, they will tell you, we have no problem here. And we've seen that. But when you step out, go ask their leaders, bring them to a room like this, they'll start abusing one another. And what happens for a gullible public that has over time, historically, taken sides, they just reinforce those biases. And do you know why they do that? Because politicians don't want to be accountable. They don't want us to talk about water. They don't want to talk about corruption. They don't want to also talk about how do we get jobs for young people, because they don't have the solutions. So I think the media need to work with us, with civil society, to see how the next 3-4 months, it's really going to be about how do we make these elections meaningful. So, for example, for the Citizens Manifesto we are working on, and this really, we're going to see how we can work collaboratively with the Peace Commission. One of the things that 93% of citizens have agreed to, said they've kind of agreed to the complexion of the next administration. So in the next, whoever wins the next government, we want to see an appointment where 30%, not more than 30% of appointments go into one region, and not below 30% of below 15% go into one region. Not above 30%, not below 15% go into one region. So citizens are proffering solutions as to how to see national cohesion going down the road. And we spoke about sharing of resources. I think it's useful to talk about sharing of resources. That is way down the road, and citizens have already started proffering solutions. But I think one of the things I really want to see is how do we make political parties to start working together. And one of the ways of helping them to work together is when they all have a stake, when they all know that the diamond, the gold, the bauxite that we have, we all own it as Sierra Leoneans. Let's share it. And what does that mean? It means, in fact, we suggested that in the Citizens Manifesto, and an overwhelming majority voted yes. We asked, do you want a situation where opposition parties, especially those in parliament, will be put on salary? And majority of citizens have said yes, let them be put on salary. We should not have a situation where if one party is not in power, they want to bring the system down. We will never develop. It will just be about changing governments like T-shirts, but our condition will not change. And it's a condition that we want to change. And lastly, so so again, because I come from IGR, what we normally push is policy. So we actually need to see how do we distinguish policy from rhetoric. And what normally I hear politicians coming to studio is to give rhetoric. How do we pin them down to policy? I would say this
in the guise of policy statements.
Yes. So how do we? So imagine a politician just sitting down and saying, abusing the president, and you have an opportunity. You're standing in front of young people who are unemployed. You have an opportunity to tell them, this is how I'm going to make you get jobs. And yet you turn around and say, I'm going to abuse the president. How is that going to help you? How is that going to help the young people that you're talking to? So to me, I really crave the indulgence of the texters that have abused me as well. Go listen to the radio. Tell your politician to tell you, how is my life going to be different in the next 5 years? Stop fighting. Just go sit down, pay attention to the television, and open your mind. Because it's been 61 years we have been in this. We have seen APC, we've seen SLPP. What you have not seen is in the next 5 years. How do we make the next 5 years better off?
All right, Abdul, when we started off, the conversation is how do we get internal structures in the political parties, first to be able to, prevent conflict, but also when those incidents come up, they should be able to mediate and resolve them within the parties. It goes back to when VSLPP had its elective conference in Bowenda. We saw what happened when some people, lost and some people won. And the women's wing was a crisis. The election came out with audios and different. But like Andrew mentioned, there is a figure there that controls everything. That would want to when that figure speaks, because of the power already, the sitting president, there's this power, so he'll be able to sort things out within the party. So even if people are disgruntled, they will not. You not see them overtly coming out like when they're in opposition, like we saw in the APC whilst in opposition. So how do these political parties set up those internal structures that would prevent, mitigate, but also mediate when they come up?
Okay, thank you so much. And these are all necessary mechanisms, for us to build peace within our political party and also to develop national cohesion, you know. However, it may interest you and those who are listening to me now. 3 weeks ago, we called all the AMBs and democratic institutions. The Peace Commission was there. They presented their own strategy before, during, and after elections. What are their own strategy to prevent conflict and mitigate conflict? And the Human Rights Commission was there, PPRC, ONS, the Australian Police, ECSL, and 14 political parties out of 17 registered political parties. What it may interest, you know, the people of this country, political party, we are not prepared to share with the people of this country. Some political party, when they are unprepared, with 2 weeks notice, having no plan as to how to prevent conflict within their political party.
They are good at formation.
And also at national level. So this is how prepared they are. And if they have no plan for themselves in preventing conflict within their own circle, and that exactly tells you why they are not prepared, you know, to mitigate or prevent violence, you know, outside of their political party. This shows a worrying situation in this country. We continue the dialogue with the political parties and also the young people and the law enforcement agencies, because what we need is actually for the people of this country to own the process of electioneering. You know, voting rights, it's a civic right, and it's a civic responsibility. It should be owned by the people, and the people should lead the process. Working with ECSL to ensure that that happens, you know, we are engaging diverse group of people, you know, from security sector and so on and so forth. But then, coming back to policies, you talk to government officials in this government and ask them about their political party manifesto. Many of them will not be able to remember some certain paragraph, you know, that talks about even social and economic development and what were the key priorities of the government, you know, their intention taking over governance of this country. And they have been failed to also communicate some of the achievement and the non-achievement, you know, blueprint in that very document. And this again, as Andrew said earlier on, creates some kind of lack of confidence and lack of trust, because people don't really know what is going on or what has been achieved. And if again we are talking about peace, we are talking about national cohesion, the key things we need to look at is respect for rule of law and that of human rights. When we are in a community and people think that being a politician is a license to be lawless, and then definitely you are a threat to, you know, the rule of law, and you are a threat also to the human rights of other members of that community. But we make fun over these issues and we take them as a joke, and we attack Sierra Leoneans who are serious about building system and building society. And we mock them and we also chase them out of their communities with abusive words or neither death threat. Interestingly, the only social group that people invest in voluntarily in this country is political party. If you set up a social club to responsible for, you know, water and sanitation in that community, the sustainability of that social group will not last for 4 years. But with political party, we have seen political party with voluntary support from citizens. It has spanned over 30 years and some 15 years. Because, I mean, this is the area that, I mean, people think will give them much bigger rewards than self-help projects in their community. And people also looking at the media and civil society player as people against them. Had it not been civil society group that really creating the platform, creating the checks and balances within government and the people, would have been in more chaos. Had it not been the media creating the platform for people like us, to discuss national issue, it would have been more problem. But the fact that the conversation of that civil society actor or that media practitioner is not favorable to the political agenda of that individual, definitely by your name, by your accent, you are the next on the list to be killed.
All right. Isata, you were giving us a list of things that should be done to correct the wrongs and keep the peace national.
Well, always they say peace starts from within. Even within us as citizens, we have our responsibility to ensure that we also observe the peaceful environment and also try to maintain it. If you win against somebody, think about that person that has lost, in whose position you have won. There are certain things that what's the pains the person will be going through, the pressure, the psychosocial needs that person will be needing. So how you also as the winner will support the person. So amongst us as citizens, we also have that responsibility. It's not trying to cry your man down or trying to kill or finish the person in totality, So this is also one of the things. And also we should be what we need is a catalyst for collaborative efforts. Collaborative efforts here, I mean that all political parties that are present in Sierra Leone, looking at the political context in this country, should also make peace a priority. So during times of campaigns, you should be able to sensitize or talk to your party supporters, talk to them about peace, so that they desist from those things that take us to chaos, that will lead us to something that we will not want to see, that makes us suffer. So you have the responsibility as well. So each political party, for each and every one of us, has that responsibility. We should bring efforts together to ensure that what we talk about is peace. And what I'm looking for, towards these elections as well, is that by now, as political parties, what they should be thinking is how to sensitize the populace on what form of electoral system we're going to use. Because people are not well informed about this, and this is what we should be thinking about. Because when people are not well informed, the tendency there is for them to do the wrong things. And then you don't know how to vote, you don't know what happens in the polls, you don't know what to do. So all of these things create chaos. So when you take your time to begin to inform and engage your community. So when I started this conversation, I said what we should be doing now is engagement. Engage community, engage in political parties. The PPRC or the electoral management bodies themselves to ensure that this process, we want it to be free and fair. We do not want anything that will tarnish the reputation of this country. So our reputation is very much paramount as a country, and we need to maintain or make sure we work towards a position, a higher position in the Global Peace Index. For us, this is how we see that the process should be working hand in hand with also the other aspects of it, because we have to take into consideration as well the economic situation. How do we think about this? As Sierra Leoneans, this is what we need to think about. I am not sure this government would be as wicked as them, because they are the ones controlling or part of the resources or most of the resources, as people are allegedly putting it, that they want to see people suffer. It brings bad name to the government itself. So all of us have to work together, design strategies that will take us out of this mess that we are as in the economic situation, and try to see how we prosper as a nation. So these are the collaborative efforts that we are looking at. and this is what I and my institution are looking for that will lead us to the path of peace.
At some point, IGL published a report that talked about how national policies are being framed as tools for revenge, and how the opposition was, using the people as a shield to escape accountability. So with that in mind, what's the strategy would you devise? So at the end of the day, that balance is maintained. That independence of the commission is clearly seen. So government understands where it is, the opposition understands where it is, just so we're able to keep this peace and national cohesion that we also desire.
Again, as I said earlier on, that what we'll be banking on is prevention. And prevention means for us at the Peace Commission a lot of communication and conversations or dialogue. And people tend to respond or reciprocate positively when they're heard, they're listened to, and also somebody reciprocate in terms of having a dialogue, a conversation. Now, for people to feel that they're heard and they're listened to, it simply means that you have to act, right? The commission is there with open ears to listen to every complaint and to also respond appropriately. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be dialoguing a lot with every political party. And we will not be doing it in isolation of PPRC because we have that cross mandate as well. If they want to do, because there are some meetings which they asked us before for isolated meetings, devolve of the PPRC, we will listen, but we'll still report to PPRC in some cases where we believe we're intertwined with our roles and responsibility, that this is going on, you need to be updated, and how could we continue this conversation, right, with you. So these are some of the things that we would continue to do and we'll continue to act upon. That's why we're also saying we'll have conversation. And when we're even having conversation at district level, we'll not be having conversation with one political party at a time. No, we'll bring all the political parties under the same roof so that everybody will air their grievances and we'll discuss solution and way forward. And with that, everybody will be on the same page. Preparedness is key for elections. If we're not prepared, then we're not ready to handle mitigations. So conflict, we need to spend more on conflict prevention. And that's exactly what the Commission has been assigned to do. We're spending more on conflict prevention. We'll go around, we'll have all this dialogue. The policies are there, yes. Things are there that people need to work on, where the civic education need to be heightened. We would definitely call on the Civic Education Commission to come on board. That, hey, we're having this event, maybe you do not have funds for it, can you pitch in into this specific event so that they will have a role to play, so that people will understand. We will not be working in isolation, devolved of all these electoral bodies, no way. Because we're working towards a peaceful elections. So we'll ensure that we carry everybody along, and we ensure that they carry us as well. So it's all about partnership. We've already signed an MOU with all the electoral bodies, management bodies, that we will continue to work in partnership and in harmony to ensure that we have a peaceful elections. And we also agreed that we'll also intertwine our activities where necessary to yield the optimum best where needed. So definitely, again, I want to emphasize that we'll not be working in isolation. We'll work with civil society where the need be, or the relevant security agencies where need be, because all the electoral management body are also part of the ONS.
All right.
So we'll continue to work in that.
We have about 3 minutes to close. So Andrew, just quickly in 45 seconds. You know, when the APC ended their National Delegate Convention in Bo, the night the mayor said her vehicle was taken away from her by the police because they told her she used the vehicle for personal gains, and she was not supposed to have done so. But again, it was Abdul who mentioned the rule of law. We've seen state actors, ministers and all of that, using their vehicles for other things. So how do we ensure fairness in the implementation of the rule of law? Because if you're saying, oh, don't use your vehicle to go and participate at a party convention, why should you use your vehicle to go and do another? So how do we do that?
So those are the kind of the forms of incumbency abuses I was talking about. So the state has enormous resources. And when you talk about resources, people normally talk about money or vehicles, but actually the dispensation of justice. How do you ensure that there's a level playing field for electoral processes? I think that's really key. So there is incumbency abuse, and I think what our role in civil society is to ensure that incumbency abuse is checked so that there's a level playing field for competitive party politics.
All right.
But I must end that the differences that we have, that Samuel, I don't know where you come from. If you come from the north, I come from the south. I think that difference is an asset.
Right.
We need to keep it.
Right.
So whoever is trying to manipulate that difference to make it a liability, I think from any political party, because that's the problem. And that's where, to me, I actually admire Lebanese people. They seem to be way smarter than us. All we think about, this is not Mende, this is not Timni, this is not Northern, and they are not concerned about that. And I said in my video that if they say they are going to sell State House, there are some people that will buy it. Maybe those ethnicities that have monopolized politics for years will not even have the monies to buy it.
Right. Abdul, quickly.
Yeah, I will end with where I started, that rule of law, accountability are the only way forward for a democratic society. And electioneering process is owned by the people. And state institutions and the government needs to respect the rights of citizens, and encourage citizens to participate in the process. So with that, we'll have a peaceful Sierra Leone.
Aissata, quickly.
Okay, I would just like to say that as Sierra Leoneans, the peace lies with us, and also just a clear warning that politics should not be a do or die game. Whoever wins and also try to embrace others so that we all can benefit. So the winner takes all mentality is wiped out in this nation.
All right. Awa?
Again, we want to encourage everybody to dialogue. And peace starts with us. Somebody already mentioned that in one of the texts. It starts with me, it starts with you. It's only when we're ready to be peaceful, then we'll be able to preach peace. So let's ensure and encourage everybody, whether it be young, old, disabled, let's get everybody on board. Men, women, irrespective of your tribe and religion. We love Sierra Leone. Put Salon first and let dialogue for peace and peaceful elections.
Thank you very much. Hawa Saleh Samai, Executive Secretary, Independent Commission for Peace and National Cohesion. Andrew Lavalley, Executive Director, Institute for Governance Reform. Abdul Fatoma, Chief Executive Officer, Campaign for Human Rights and Development International. And Dr. Aissata Mahoy, National Coordinator, WANEP. It's been a pleasure having all of you here, gentlemen and ladies. This is where we end tonight's program. Thank you all for sharing with us your thoughts. We did not go through all of your messages, unfortunately, because some were more political than the conversation, and they did not contribute to shaping a peace and national cohesion we are looking for. But thank you very much. We appreciate and enjoy the privilege of your time tonight. Up next is our AYV Primetime News. Until then, the show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Wise Bangura, wishing you all a